Torah, Vayakhel, page Zayin, second column, about 15 lines from the end of the page. The last thing that Rabbi is explaining, just like in general Chayas of Hashem, the save of Mamala, the same thing, there's the bringing down of Elokus through Torah mitzvahs. Torah is Mamala, you internalize it. Mitzvahs, on the other hand, are saved. And he explains the concept of a mitzvah is the keli for that particular koyach of the nefesh, for that particular power of the nefesh to come in. And that comes in a makiv tika level. Okay, this is where we're up to now. So he says, okay, so he says like this, no, about 10 lines to the end of the page. Kasher yekayim ad mitzvah echad, when a person does a mitzvah, yamshich olav levush, he brings down this garment from the level of malchus. Like it says by Mordechai, b'levush malchus. She'anim shechol b'chinas makiv, that it comes in an encompassing way. Al derech Moshe, like he says, like for instance, Aideya anochas tefillin shebezrei val roishei, by putting tefillin on your hand and head, sheyesh b'am dalet parshis, that have 4 parshis of the Torah. In the Sharash, it's 4 distinct boxes. In the Shalyad, it's 1 box. Mam shechol b'chinas dalet meichin el yenim. You bring down the 4 levels of seichel. There's sometimes 4 levels of seichel. He says Kaddish is kenaged chochma, Vaya kviyacha is bina, and Shmai Vayim Shemaya is das and whatever. Hamshacha, so but this Hamshacha is b'chinas makif levat, is only in a superficial level. Shai de'anochas funksum with the Gashmi. Because when you have tefillin that are written on physical parchment, it doesn't actually, when you put on tefillin, you don't feel openly this level of seichel from matzilas in your head. It's only shayda b'chinas ma'meach b'chinas ma'kebolvad. So it says like this: when you put on tefillin, you bring down. It says the 4 levels of seichel. That's why, by the way, in the tefillin, if you ever notice in the head tefillin, outside the box, one side there's a shin with 3 parts, and there's one shin with 4 parts. Now what's the difference? It's the 3 seichel and the 4 seichel. In other words, why is the shin with 4 parts, 4 lines? Because then you have 3 parts in between. That's one level of shin, the in-between air spaces. And then they have 3, because then you have the 3 actual lines, which is Shema, whatever. It's 3 levels of das and 4 levels of das. 3 levels of seichel, 4 levels of seichel. But it's all makif. When you put on tefillin, you're not all of a sudden feeling this level of chochma bina das and so on. You don't do it. Kolam ninshem b'chinas malchus yisbarach in the level of makif al nefesh, and they called them mitzvah seivarim. L'chera, why they call limbs? Limbs is pneumius. He said derech Moshe beivari aguf kasher yaches es chavei becha me'avodav. When you hold a friend, like you grab his hand, right? By grabbing his hand, you can pull to you the whole body. You're not only pulling the hand. You actually, when you pull a guy with his foot or hand or head or whatever it is, by holding on to one of the limbs. Therefore, you bring down the whole Ein Sof. In other words, like this, just say by a person, when you grab one limb, you bring the whole person to you. You do one mitzvah, you mamshich all of Ein Sof. And he says, this parenthesis is interesting, which is higher than Malchus. Here, the Rebbe is saying through mitzvahs, you bring down Malchus. In other places, it says you bring down Anechi, which is the essence even higher than the 10 Sfiras. which is a level of Kesed of Malchus. Okay. So he says the Peil, what does it mean? Why are mitzvahs likened to Eivarim? Just like when you pull somebody, so two things. Number one, the chayis of the nefesh permeates. Secondly, when through one limb you can grab the whole body. So mitzvahs are called Eivarim. Number one, you're bringing down elokus into a particular limb. Let's say for tefillin, yeah? You put it on the hand and the heart. So you mamshech elokus into the hand and the heart. He says, but it's a derech makif. But the bigger mile is when you grab the head, the hand, or the whatever it is, you can get the whole person. So when a person does a mitzvah, number one, they're bringing down that level of elokus that normally wouldn't be revealed. It's coming in a makif level. But secondly, you're bringing down all of elokus. It's just coming down through the particular way, like you pull the guy with his hand, so you're bringing him through the hand, but really you're bringing the whole person. That's why Chassidus explains, the halacha is, the Gemara says, Aisik b'mitzvah, pater min ha-mitzvah. While you're doing one mitzvah, you're pater from doing another mitzvah. So the question is, well, I'm doing one mitzvah, how does that free me from doing another mitzvah? So Chassidus explained, because all mitzvahs are interconnected with each other. So if I'm doing tefillin, I'm doing tzitzis. And when I'm doing tzitzis, I'm doing tefillin. Because that's why Eisik b'mitzvah, you're occupied in the mitzvah, you don't have to do another, but I mean, it's not, the halacha is you can't do both, you can only do one. So while you're doing one, you don't have to do another. The classic example of this in the Gemara is, if somebody watches a lost article, say, I found your animal, okay? So the question is, am I a paid watchman or a guy that's not paid? So there's an argument in the Gemara between the Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says you're a shemer sachar. You're getting paid? Good, what are you getting paid? Nobody's paying me. So Rabbi Yosef says, why are you getting paid? Because if a poor man comes to you, while you're working with the animal, feeding and taking care of the animal that you're watching for somebody else, you don't have to give him tzedakah. Why? Because you're doing a mitzvah, shemer aveda. In fact, the Gemara calls it pruta de Rav Yosef. You save the pruta of Rav Yosef. That means, so the question is, I'm watching a guy's lost animal, how am I doing the mitzvah tzedakah? What's one thing you have to do with the next? So Chassidus explains, because every mitzvah includes all the other mitzvahs in it. Like he's saying here, you grab one limb, you bring all the limbs. Because in Kedusha, it's all biskalos.
There is a difference between limb and limb.
Yeah, but nevertheless, any limb you pull, you can get the whole person. By the way, I'll give you, you can pull their hair, you also get them. And the hair is not even a limb. It's not even a limb, but it's connected to the head or the beard, whatever. So you can get the whole person. So through that, then avarcha shimcha in a level of gilui pnimi. Then through arimimcha lekai hamelech, by bringing down the level of makif, so then I could come into a pnimius. And that's why through Torah, you bring the mitzvah into a pnimius. Through Maisa mitzvahs, nim shebechinas malchus yizbarich. You bring down the level of malchus in a way that it becomes malchus kol elamim. In other words, he said before, mitzvahs bring down levush malchus. So you bring down malchus. He says through arimim cholekai hamelech, by doing a mitzvah, that it brings down the level of makif, in the level of malchus, then eventually you can bring it down, malchus kol elamim, now it comes into pnimius. Ne'inyin amshacha de bechinas makif. Sheidei mitzvahs, that's the concept of the curtains of the Mishkan that were on top of the Mishkan. The Yiddi is the curtains, were the covering of the Mishkan. Yeah. Right, every bracha is the same thing. Hine agam shederach prat. Heim ramach mitzvah saseh. Which are ramach ivar 248 limbs. Ach derech klal mischalkim lezayin chalokim. Generally speaking, it's divided into 7. Like the 7 branches of Mnedo. Like it says, Chetz, Amadao, Shabbat, the pillars were 7. Those are mitzvahs. He says like this. What's the cheshbon? Taryag mitzvahs de'araisa, the 613 biblical mitzvahs. And Zayim mitzvahs rabbanon, and 7 rabbinic mitzvahs. Altogether equals 620. Which is the numerical value of Keser, which Chassidus explains is Tarach Amudei or 620 pillars of light that you bring down when you do mitzvahs. But Klus and Shava Bechines, generally speaking, that's in detail the 613, 620. But in details, there's only 7. It's like the Gemara says at the end of Makis, that the Gemara says over there that there's 613 mitzvahs, and this guy came and put him on 11, and this guy came and put it on 8, whatever it was. And then the Gemara, Chavakuk, V'amida Malachas, Chavakuk took all 613 mitzvahs and put it into one. Tzadik V'amunasi Yichya, the Inyan of Amunah. So that doesn't mean there's not 613 mitzvahs. But if the essence of all the mitzvahs that I've been saying here is 7. They could all be divided into 7 categories. That's why the Menorah had 7 branches, not 613 branches. Because it's all really corresponding with the 7 midas, each one composed of 10, which were the 70 nations, but the 70 Jews that came down to Egypt, the 70 elders, all these numbers are they're all interconnected. And then he says like this.
And the whole thing is on
What?
And the whole thing is on
Anechi. Yeah.
Right?
Right. That includes everything. Because the essence of Hashem is what it's all about. So that's why it's all emunah. But this time it's later. It's interesting. How do we know there's 613 mitzvahs? You look in Torah, it doesn't say. In fact, there's arguments. The Ramban, the Chinuch, the Smag. What the number? What everybody agrees, because the Gemara says. The Gemara says that this Gemara we just called the end of Makkah says Hashem gave 613 mitzvahs. How do we know what the Gemara says? The Gemara says it says Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. Yeah, Torah equals 611. Torah 611 mitzvahs Tziva Lanu Moshe, because the first 2 we heard from Hashem. So if Moshe Rabbeinu gave us 611 and we heard 2 from Hashem, it's 613. Shkach to your goof.